Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and I want to share one simple gun owner trick with you to help you save some money. Because a lot of people are starting to get extra rifles and handguns. They're getting into that gun owner mode where you just keep going down the rabbit hole, and that's great. But kitting those guns out can be really expensive, especially if you want to start getting lights, optics, slings, and everything else related to what your gun may need to be fully functional. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 3 gun accessories that you technically only need one of. Now, of course, it's a personal decision, but these 3 things can help you save a lot of money instead of having to buy them for each individual rifle or pistol that you own. And my goal here is to share that with you in case it's starting to look daunting for how you'll afford to actually kit out every single gun in your arsenal. Now, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can get out here, give you information like this, even though they probably don't like it. Because in all honesty, me telling you to only buy one of these things instead of 5, 6, or 7 of them isn't really great for their business model. But they're really good people over there at Midway USA, and that's why I appreciate the partnership, because they allow me to make videos like this without any issues. So a big thanks to them. Now, there's one caveat to this conversation, okay? If you're only gonna have one of these things, it probably needs to be of decent quality. You don't wanna get the cheapest thing off Amazon and then use it on every rifle or pistol you own and expect it to do well, right? You wanna use some of the money you're saving by taking this approach to invest in higher quality, which is where I think this whole idea really shines, because instead of buying 3 $50 items for your 3 rifles, you can buy one $100 item, which is of much better quality, and it can just jump around to each rifle. So that's the main caveat. Let's get into what the first accessory is that you only technically need one of. Now, first off, if you're like me and you have raging OCD that makes you kit out every single rifle you own, even if it's not practical, then hit the subscribe button below, because we're the same here. Now, the first accessory you technically only need one of is going to be a sling. Slings are very important. They keep the rifle to your body and they allow you to go hands-free. But technically you only need one, and buying slings for every single rifle you own can get very expensive. So first off, for demonstration purposes, we have a Wilson Combat Aero Precision amalgamation rifle right here, and we have a Sig Sauer MCX spear right here. So what do I mean by all this? Well, let me show you. So as long as your sling has quick detached swivels, as you see right here, and as I have here on the back. Obviously, it can be removed very quickly. It can also be reinstalled very quickly, as you see. Okay? So if your rifle has QD mounts for your sling, whether or not it's on the stock or on the handguard or wherever it might be, you can now take that sling off and attach it to your other rifle that also has QD mounts. And even the mounts can be expensive. So keep that in mind. Kitting out every rifle with a sling can get pricey, and this can save you quite a bit. Now, one sling that I definitely recommend is the Magpul MS1 when it comes to being relatively budget friendly while still being high quality. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you're gonna only have one sling, it needs to be of a certain quality. A $20 Amazon sling is definitely not what I would recommend. But the Magpul slings are pretty good, and they do a good job of being comfortable, adjustable, and durable. So I think for the price, they're kind of hard to beat. Now, on the spear here, I have a Blue Force Gear sling. And this is actually a Vickers Combat padded sling. It's a really nice sling. I got the padded one because this is kind of a heavier rifle. But just like on the Wilson Combat Aero Precision over there, we have QD attachment points, so the sling comes off very easily. And now that the sling is off, I can just take this right here, attach it to the other rifle, okay? And in a very short period of time, I now have my sling on a different rifle. So what's nice about that is I could just have this one sling and move it to every rifle I own, because in most circumstances, I'm only shooting one rifle at a time. I think that's most of our experience here as well. But regardless, that's a place you can save a lot of money, because slings are expensive. The Blue Force Gear is around $100, so maybe a little more. The Magpul jumps around between 40 and 70, depending on what's going on. But either way, both of these slings are good, but you only need one if you run it this way. So if you're kind of freaking out about how you're going to afford to put slings and everything on all your guns, well, this is one accessory you only need one of. So what's the next one? All right, so the second gun accessory that you really only need one of, but it requires a little bit of effort in the sense of making sure everything you own is compatible with it, especially regarding handguns, is going to be a light. Now, the reason that is because most lights are put together in such a way that they're easy to remove and reinstall. Now, lights can get expensive, and there are some that are more budget friendly that I find to be very good. However, if you're only going to have one light, you obviously want it to be decent. And there are some things to consider about some of the more expensive lights that might even apply to rifles as well as handguns. And that's something else we're going to talk about here in a second. But first off, this works out well as long as you're willing to accommodate it. So what does that mean? Well, if you're going to do it for rifles, for example, let's say I have a Surefire M640V right here, right? This is a little bit more difficult to move around. If I wanted it to be a little bit more mobile, there'd be two things I'd be looking for. One, I would want it to have a Picatinny rail attachment. Right now it's attached using M-LOK, which makes it a little bit more difficult. Not much more, but Picatinny generally is more universally friendly to quick detach or just moving things around quickly. Now, the other thing is that I'd want it to have a thumb cap tail switch. I wouldn't want it to actually have a pressure switch. I want to be able to activate it with my thumb, because then any rifle I move it to, I just move it to where that makes sense, and then now I have it ready to go and ready to use. Whereas a pressure switch requires positioning and cable management and a lot of other things. So those are good considerations to keep in mind. Now, for handguns, something like this Surefire X300 Turbo is really nice because all it does is have a thumb screw, or if you have the A version, it has a rail lock or a lever latch attachment, which will allow you to have it more quick detached than even the thumb screw. But this is easy enough to remove that I don't find it to be too much of a hindrance. And of course you can use like a quarter or a screwdriver or something just to take it off if you tighten it down really tight. And what's nice is that once I have that off, I can attach it to just about anywhere else, including, if need be, onto a rifle wherever there's Picatinny rail. So I could set that up like this, no problem at all. But before we get into that, because there's a little bit more to that I want to talk to you about, I do have another pistol here. So, as a demonstration, I'll just go ahead and show you. If you're going to do this for your handgun, which I think is not a bad idea, because really, having one high quality pistol light is better than a bunch of crappy ones. And if you only use the pistol that's on you, how many lights do you really need, right? But you will need to make sure the holsters you have for your different guns accommodate that same pistol light. So, for now, I was wearing my Beretta holster right here. As you can see, I reattach my light here. Not too tight, because this is just for demo purposes, right? Tighter than that, I would say. Well, I had a good time with that. I hope you did too. It doesn't really help that my fingers are freezing to death because these gloves are not insulated at all and this wind is really picking up. So, you know, I'm working on it, but I appreciate the patience as I make this happen. So, this is now on here, I believe, to a degree that'll keep the light on this time. Let's find out. There we go. It's a little loose, but that's okay. So, holster right here, right? Fits just fine, okay? Now, I want to move this over to my M&P Performance Center 10mm by Smith & Wesson. Do I want to buy multiple $300 pistol lights? Maybe not. Maybe that's not a good idea. But do I want to be able to have one that's very powerful and very capable while still being able to use it on the majority of my pistols as long as the holsters I have for them accommodate it? I'd say that's a pretty decent idea. So let's go ahead and spin this on. If I can feel my fingers, which I'm not sure if they're actually working right now. That's on good enough. And obviously, here's the holster for it. It'll slide right in now. So, that's one thing you can do. Now, bear with me, because I'm gonna go ahead and pull out a tool because my fingers just aren't working anymore. Okay. Now, well, that's not a tool, that's a magazine. There we are. All right, now, like I said, you could actually do this on a rifle as well with just your pistol light. If you wanted to attach it to a Picatinny section, like so, and then tighten it down, not using your frozen fingers that don't work properly, okay? As you can see, the pistol light is now mounted on the rifle. So if you bought a high quality pistol light, you could actually get away with using it on your handguns and your rifles, depending on how you want to set things up. And honestly, something like the Surefire X300 Turbo, although it's very expensive, is extremely powerful. And it's definitely powerful enough to be qualified as a rifle light, which is very cool because it is bright. Like, we're in not that dark of conditions right now, just overcast, and I can see the spotlight on targets that are past the camera right now. So that is an option as well to really save you some money. Instead of having 2 mediocre lights on your rifles and 1 mediocre pistol light, you could have one of the best lights on the market and just move it from rifle to pistol or whatever you want to do. Like I said, as long as everything accommodates it. Now, another consideration here regarding the light situation is that a lot of companies sell certain kits that allow your pistol light to become a rifle light in a more traditional way. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's the thing. If there are lights I would recommend, it's going to be the Surefire X300 series because they're very well proven and they're very good. Or of course the M640 or M340 versions that they have out now. But obviously, like I said, not quite as quick to attach and definitely not pistol friendly. So considerations to make. And then the other lights I would recommend are going to be Streamlight, TLR1, which is a pistol light as well, but also decent enough to be on a rifle, good quality. And of course, something like a TLR7 is good for your pistols as well if you want to switch between that, but not so much as good for a rifle. Definitely good on handguns. I think that's a great option. But here's what's really cool. If you have a TLR1, which is what this is, but this is the HPL, which is a very high lumen output, gigantic lens light, as you can see right here, but it's very strong. So it's mainly for like predator hunting and stuff like that. Either way, kind of a cool light. This is a TLR1, just one of their variants. They have rifle kits for TLR1s from Streamlight, as well as X300s from Surefire. And these rifle kits are really cool because it takes the switch off the back of your pistol light and turns it into a rifle light in the sense of allowing it to have a pressure switch and a manual activation switch. So that turns this one light into a rifle light or a pistol light and allows you to save a lot of money in the process if you're willing to move it around. And honestly, turning thumb screws isn't that hard to do. So if you look at all the options there, which there are many, I think you can see that you can get away with one light. If you're gonna do it though, make sure it's good quality. Streamlight would be my baseline of standards, and then Surefire steps it up an additional notch, especially with a lot of the different switches and everything else they have to offer. I think both are a very good option, and I think this saves you a lot of money. So, what's the third accessory you technically only need one of? All right, so we had some technical difficulties in that last section, but you know what? I think it's still good to go because the information's there and that's what we're here for, right? So the third gun accessory that you only need one of, which can get expensive if you start buying multiples, is going to be a bipod. Now, not all rifles need a bipod, but having one is very handy, especially if you want to go out and get your optics zeroed and have a nice stable shooting position. Bipods add a lot of benefits. However, they're not cheap. And if you get a cheap bipod, you'll find out that they are indeed cheaply made. I have a cheaper bipod I ran on my 22 for a while. It literally just fell apart and I don't even barely use it. So having a quality bipod that you only need to buy one of isn't a bad way to go. And of course, you could spend $300, $400, $500 on a bipod if you want. But in all honesty, at least from personal experience, Harris bipods do the job very well. This is a Harris SLM bipod, and I think they're worth the premium over some of those cheaper bipods while still not being nearly as expensive as some of the competition that's out there. So Harris is a good way to go. So that way you can attach it to a rifle you decide you need a bipod for, but then if you want to move it around to other rifles for, like I said, going to the range and re-zeroing an optic or whatever it is, you can easily do that. Now this is an M-LOK Harris SLM bipod. And the reason I got an M-LOK one isn't so I could attach it to the gun specifically, because yes, you could do that and it's a nice, very low profile way to mount a bipod, but it's a little more difficult to uninstall and reinstall and everything else. Not that hard, don't get me wrong, but a little more difficult. I got the M-LOK one because America Defense Manufacturing, ADM, American Defense Manufacturing, sorry, they make a M-LOK QD attachment for your bipod. And so what that does is it allows you to install the Harris to the QD attachment point here, which is really nice. And then that allows you to now attach it directly to Picatinny rail. So what I've done is I've added pick rail to the bottom of each of these rifles. Now this rifle, in all honesty, doesn't usually have this here because I just have zero interest in having a bipod on this rifle. But I have other rifles that have that same piece of rail section that have magnified optics that I like to be able to reach out a little bit further with, and I like to make sure I can get a stable shooting position. So for example, here on the Spear, this bipod with this attachment just locks right into place, and now I have a bipod ready to go. Then if I want to take out a different rifle, I merely just come over here, pull the lever, pop the bipod off, and I can go ahead and slap it on my other gun here, and we're good to go. And what's really nice about this is that if I am out in the field, let's say, and I have my rifle with me and some of my other gear, and I don't know if I'll need a bipod or not, this bipod is easy to take off. I throw it in my backpack, and then if I need a bipod for some reason, I can go ahead and attach it at that point. So I'm not carrying additional weight on the rifle for no reason, but I still have the ability to access it quickly if I decide I need it. So this is a great way to run a bipod and allows you to only really need one. Now I have a mag-pulled bipod as well, and I have that cheap bipod I was telling you about before, and it's nice to have other options, of course. But if budget is tight and you know you want a bipod, but you have 4 rifles that could use one, well, this gets you in the door without having to buy 4 bipods. So that is my list of the 3 gun accessories you really only need one of. Now, of course, I'm not saying you only have to have one. Get as many as you want. But if you're worried about, being on a budget and it's hard to kit every gun out you own in a way that you want, and you want to buy quality components, but they're expensive, well, at least these 3 things allow you to do that without spending a lot of money, right? And the other thing that's nice is that they don't really affect the functionality of the rifle or the pistol that you're using them for. There's a reason why I didn't add optics to this list, for example. Yes, optics often have quick detach mounts, which is nice, and you could technically switch them from rifle to rifle or whatever you want to do. But the problem with that is that you have to re-zero every time you do that. It doesn't matter if it's the same barrel length, the same cartridge, or whatever it is. You can't just assume a 0 on one rifle is going to transfer directly over to another. So it's not as user-friendly, and it doesn't really go back and forth as quickly or easily, and I personally wouldn't suggest doing that. But I would suggest using this method for any of the other things we just talked about, because in all reality, like I said, you're only going to have one rifle on you at a time, and this allows you to save a little bit of money. So let me know in the comments below if you found this helpful, or let me know if you disagree with me, or if there's other things that we should add to this list to help other people get their money's worth out of this hobby, which can be very expensive. And of course, any feedback you have for me, I appreciate as well. If you want to go to the website, magicprepper.com, there's a lot of stuff there, including ways to join the Discord, ways to network with other people, and there's also possible discounts and everything else related to supporting the channel. So I would appreciate that. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.